All right. Well, hello, everybody. We're super excited about our Awareness Week Town Hall. So we're just going to give everybody a second to get in here before we get started about staying connected and building community. So as folks start to get settled, yeah, we see Ethan is trapped in a box. But as folks start to get settled, just wanted to remind you that our Awareness Week theme is chalk it up to values. And our OCD often latches on to things that are important to us and onto values. But we've been talking really this week about how we can flip the switch by using things that are important to us to really motivate us through treatment. So as folks come in, we'd love to hear your name, where you're from. We'd also love to hear, is there something that gives you motivation to fight your OCD? Is there a value that's coming to you this week? And while folks are coming in, any values that y'all are thinking about this week, fellow advocates?
Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. Friendships.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any for me particular, but one that I always talk to my clients about is just like living in your greater self. Like, who are you as a person and what do you want to accomplish in your life? And how is OCD stopping that? And that's what you got to work on, those values.
Yeah, identity and, finding that identity by working on your OCD and getting that time back.
And I always think about self-care. That's an ongoing.
Definitely though.
Dave says acceptance in the chat. And then Alexandra, one of my favorite people, her compassion and sun. I like
Thanks,
those.
Alex. I love that. And there's so many different things. I always say I'm an educator. My students are often one. And I do a lot of stuff with our faith initiatives. Faith, I think, can be very much a value too, as we try to kind of get back to the way that faith is important to us, as opposed to the way that OCD might latch onto it. So lots of different things. So y'all feel free to keep coming in and trying to tell us where you're from and any values that are important to you as a part of Awareness Week. And we'll start to jump in. So really quickly, this live stream is intended to serve as educational content and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or contact a local clinician. The International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline and should not be used if you're in distress or feel unsafe. If you're in a crisis or if you're ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room, call 911, or call the Suicide Prevention Hotline at 800-273-8255. We always, if you've been with us in our streams, want to create a really safe space. And we encourage everyone to be kind and respectful. With that, please remember that this is being recorded on various social media platforms. So be mindful that if you ask personal questions or leave comments, that these things are public. But at the end of the day, we are here to support one another, and we encourage you to ask questions, to be compassionate. And we always say, as a part of advocacy, you're really advocating in the chat with one another as well. Yes. So feel free, especially during Awareness Week, to share your thoughts. And we're just so glad that you're here. So yes, Jeff, we value you as well. I see that Jeff values us. So thank you, Jeff. We value you too.
Thanks, Jeff.
Support.
We just don't want him on our team for trivia, but we value him.
Yeah. That's all right. It was a tech problem, Chris. Okay.
A mental tech problem.
So tonight our topic is really in line with Awareness Week. It's all about staying connected and building community. I know that we're coming off of our conference where a lot of folks got to hear about our stories, but tonight we're really going to talk a little bit more about our advocacy and about how our stories connected us with that advocacy and the community work that we're doing now. So we're each going to go through and take a few minutes just to introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about our journeys and about our advocacy now, and really what that awareness looks like, as well as our connection to community. So I'd love to start with Chris, because you're at the top of my screen. If you don't mind sharing for us first, that would be awesome.
Yeah, a couple of things I just wanted to share with everyone for OCD Awareness Week. One of the things that we all have on this panel, of course, is lived experience. And I was kind of reflecting for OCD Awareness Week, like, what is something I wish somebody would have talked to me about during my OCD journey? And I think there's a couple points I want to make quickly. Is the first thing I think that really helped me, and kind of going back into that theme of chalk it up to values, is I started to ask myself who I had become because of the OCD. And I started to see myself as somebody who isolated who didn't connect with people, who was quiet, was introverted, was sad. And those are such the antithesis of me as a person. And I really decided, kind of in this theme of chalk it up to values, I value that I'm talkative and that I interact with people and that I'm external and I'm social. And those things really, I lost myself. And so that was a big part of my treatment, was less about getting better and more so growing back into the person that I became. There were certain times that I almost envied my younger self pre-OCD, because there were so many components of myself I liked and I had lost it. So I think to everybody watching, the reason I love the Chalk It Up to Values theme for OCD Awareness Week is remind yourself what you love about yourself and who you are, and get angry at the OCD for taking that away and fight through the treatment to get better. A quick other point I want to make is, I really made OCD treatment the focus and getting my mental health better. And I think that we're able to engage in life once we get our mental health better. And so we got to make it a priority. And I was talking to a client today, and she just felt really bad that she had to take some time off of work because of this. But we wouldn't feel bad if we got in a car accident or had cancer. So remember that mental health matters. And that's what OCD Awareness Week is about, is reminding that our mental health is a body part too, our brain, our heads, right? And we've got to take care of ourselves and make it absolutely something that we take seriously. I wanted to make a comment about the conference last week, and also the young adult event that we had last night. One of the things I was really touched by is there was an LGBTQ breakout that I helped host for the young adults, and just hearing how the ways that OCD attacked each individual's kind of experience being queer. So some of them had obsessions around coming out and sexual orientation and gender identity OCD. So I think it was just powerful for a group of people in the community that IOCDF provided there and at the conference. And the last thing I want to say is I love being part of OCD Southern California, because I think we all get it. The reason I love these 5 people alongside of me is because we've all walked a similar journey and we get each other. So remember that this OCD community through the IOCDF is there for you to really provide that group through the affiliates, through the events, to let you know you're not alone. And for OCD Awareness Week, my mission and what I hope we're able to do is touch many more people to teach them what the real OCD is. And through that, we're going to get more research, more support, more treatment, and we're going to get people better quicker, so people don't have to suffer as long as we did. So super excited about this week and about this event tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And I see, along with everything that you're sharing, that we have the IOCDF. Heather behind the scenes is putting some stuff on Chalk It Up to Values in the chat so that y'all can see how you can participate in this awesome community and really connect in ways that are meaningful. So thank you, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ethan to share. And as we move through, I would also encourage y'all to go ahead and start loading questions into the chat. We are going to be answering questions about community, about advocacy, but it's Awareness Week, so we're happy really to answer anything that you would like to hear from this group. So go ahead and start loading questions as we chat. Go ahead, Ethan.
I just wanted to say hi to Osama. I hope I get this right. Osama in Morocco, North Africa. That's pretty cool. Thanks for tuning in. I think it's pretty late there, or the next day. Either way, no, thank you, Katie. I appreciate it. It's always hard to follow Chris because he's so good at just expressing himself, and I'm not. But with that in mind, I love this conversation. I'm with 5 of my favorite people, and I think for me, community is key, and I think that we can all relate to some semblance of lack of community that we experience, especially struggling with our OCD, whatever that looked like. I know for me in school, not only was I bullied or made fun of, and we all have different journeys in our school, depending on, or during our school years, depending on when the OCD flared up. But for me, it really took a bite out of a sense of community for me. I don't know that I ever felt a sense of community in school or with friends or really anywhere outside of my parents, just because I was so uncomfortable and I was so anxious all the time. And I had so many fears and thoughts and just hesitations around doing anything. And it wasn't that I wasn't invited at times. I was, but the only community I knew was my family. And I was also very aware that other people were feeling differently about whether they were in band or choir or sports team. And like, they felt that sense of camaraderie and togetherness. And I was very aware that I didn't have those feelings. All I knew was I wanted to be at home. I wanted to be near my mother. I wanted to feel safe. I was afraid of throwing up, getting sick, being embarrassed. And, so those things weren't fun for me. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that as well. That's why I think community is so important to me now. And not only is it important in terms of a value, but just the ability to appreciate and enjoy being part of a community that understands what I've gone through, that I understand what people are going through, and to be able to build long-lasting friendships that are so much more than our OCD. You know, OCD is a connection point. It's a touch point. It's a place to get a conversation started. But what we find, and probably so many of you have found, I know we found it as a group, is, you know, our friendship is not based on our OCD. We met that way, but we all are friends for different reasons. We all relate to each other in different ways. You know, we all connect on different places, things that we do, jobs. And that's really the amazing thing about this community is, you know, we get it, we understand it, and we relate to it, and we can be compassionate about it and be in it together. But the ability to connect with friends long-term, meet people, that's really what this is all about. And I would say for me, and I've said this before, you know, and this goes into the advocacy too, is, you know, when people are like, would you do it all again? I was like, yeah, because I'm here with, you know, all of you watching. I'm here with Chris, Valerie, and Liz, and Katie, and Tom, and, you know, and Heather behind the scenes, and Jeff, and like, I mean, I could go on and on. I could name everybody at the conference. And while I don't really want to go through what I went through again, at the same time, we're here now because of that. And that's part of community. That community would not be there or exist. And, you know, I don't want to brag about us as a community, but I think we're a pretty kick-ass community. I really do. I really think that, you know, the way we love and support each other, the way we're compassionate and feel for each other, the way we're there and show up for each other, I think it's special. I think it's unique. I may be a little biased, but it's the truth. So, you know, in terms of community connection, I'm grateful, you know, that my OCD brought me here. I'm grateful that I can advocate and share my experiences with all of these folks and all of you. But at the end of the day, you know, we're nothing without you, and we're nothing without community. And that's what it's really about for me. So I'm super excited to be here. And thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Ethan. Well, between Ethan and Chris, if I wasn't a part of the OCD community, I would want to be. This is, it's just, it really is. It's such a special group, and I see so much love from the chat and everyone who's posting too. Y'all are amazing, and you're a part of this community and this advocacy community, and it's just an honor to do this work together. So we'd love to hear a little bit about you, Val, and your journey and connection to advocacy and community.
Well, thank you, Katie. First, I want to really thank everybody for taking the time out this evening. I think it's such an important topic. And my personal goal is to really listen to what our advocates and our advocates to be have to say, because I think that's important. And one of my other focuses tonight is hopefully encouraging and answering questions and letting people see ourselves as an example that they too can get better, that advocating is simply agreeing and standing together with somebody. It doesn't take a whole bunch of effort. I started very simple. Once I got into thinking about being an advocate, it became really important to me to advocate for people of color, especially women of age and of faith, because in my own personal walk, all of that was missing. And even though I had the support and love of the church, I didn't have the understanding. And I kind of found myself thrown in this world that I had no idea existed. You know, I had no idea about anything when it came to OCD, or let alone mental illness. And I found myself feeling very alone and isolated because there was not a lot of people that looked like me, not only in my ethnic group, but also my age group and also people of faith. So that's kind of where my heart lies, even though I love all people. You know, I advocate for everyone. That is kind of the journey that I have been on. And so I hope this evening, if I can share part of my journey and make somebody else's journey a little less long or lighten the path a bit, then I'll be satisfied.
Thank you, Val.
That's basically, with me, just looking forward to tonight.
Thank you. Thanks, Val. And for anyone who has not seen yet, Val just had an awesome blog come out for our Chalk It Up to Values theme this week with the IOCDF. So please, please, please check that out. It's wonderful. And that also leads me to, I should have said before, Chris had an awesome article come out today too, actually in Vice on BDD. And it's awesome. So please, please, please check that out too. I'm sure we can put both of those in the comments at some point for everyone to support the work our advocates are doing. Yeah, go ahead, Val.
I just thought of a point that I really didn't want to miss. Yeah. When I was advocating, I had so much anger against the International OCD Foundation, because it's like, what are they doing to promote advocacy and all those things that goes along with it? And then it dawned on me that you were doing that, and I was a product of that, and that it became very important for me to make sure that we're committed, that people of color are committed also in this walk. And it's not just the foundation versus us, it's us versus ourselves. And I didn't want to forget.
Thank you. Thanks, Val. And thank you so much for helping to lead that work with the IOCDF. I know that you inspire a lot of folks to come with you in that journey. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Tom, tell us a little bit about your community piece.
I think my community piece really lies in the word thankful. So the whole journey of having OCD, being diagnosed with OCD, and like Ethan said before, I wouldn't necessarily want to go through, he made a really good point, I wouldn't necessarily want to go through what I went through all over again. But in the same sentence, I also wouldn't change anything of it, because this community was given to me because of all my struggles. And now I'm alongside you five here, trying to help other people who are going through that same struggle. And so I think for me, just understanding the journey is way more important than, the outcome. And the people you meet along the journey are way more important than the end goal and the outcome too. And I think overall, I've met some of the best people in my life through the OCD community, through the conferences. And I think really what I want everybody to get out of this talk and from future talks and from the OCD community is to never feel alone. Like I know I felt before I found this community. I want this community to find people before they have to feel alone. And that's kind of, that's where my community piece is really.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. And I see that folks are starting to put some awesome questions in the chat. So please, please, please keep doing that. And we're going to be sure to start getting to those in just a second, but go ahead and start loading them up. And Liz, I would love to give you a second to share. And you've been getting a lot of love in the chat for your advocacy and your work as a clinician. So I'm sure folks are excited to hear from you.
Thank you. It's hard. I really don't know how to put into words what advocacy means to me and the journey that brought me here and the reason I stay here. I spoke about this the other night with Ethan, and I think that I really do believe I was called to advocacy and that it chose me. I didn't really choose it. I never would have imagined when I was first diagnosed with OCD and in the middle of my darkest, deepest struggles that I would be able to do things like take a shower quickly, wear the clothes I wanted out of my closet, attend church and be able to be present and enjoy it, have relationships, have friendships. When you live with OCD, you learn to not take all these little things for granted. And so the thought of being able to advocate or speak out or make a difference, that was nowhere right in my mind frame. Like it wasn't something I even thought was possible. And here I am. I kind of was thrown into advocacy. I was called into it, and I started telling my story when I was 17, right through the conference. The conference is where I began my advocacy journey, and IOCDF is where my advocacy continues. And I am today continuing to do different work in the field, but advocacy is what drives me. And I'll share a quick story. I was talking with one of my clinicians today, and we were talking about some of the cases she's most proud of. And we were talking about how creative you have to be and how outside the box you have to think sometimes with patients. We can't put people in boxes and do standard treatment. And there was a theme that caught me a little bit off guard, but all three of the cases she shared that she was so proud of are now really big advocates. And I remember, everyone has their views maybe or their thoughts on the 12-step program for recovery. But the one thing I really love about 12 steps is when you think about what is the last and final step, right? It's becoming a sponsor, and it's giving back to someone else what you've been given. And I don't hold the treatment that I received and the help that I got. That's not something I take lightly. It is something I'm grateful for every day of my life. And to be able to have an opportunity to share that with other people, to where they might be able to experience the peace that they deserve, is truly an honor. It's not something I feel like I do. It's not something I feel like I need to do or I have to do. It's an honor for me to be able to share the stage with others and to do what I can to allow my story to hopefully encourage other people to get help or to speak out as well. And I really do believe, I'll end with this quick statement. I remember I was doing a talk once with Dr. Drew, and he was talking about DJ AM, and he talked about how when they were doing an event together, he gave a comment to DJ AM of how much he loved his shoes. And he was like, I love those tennis shoes. They're awesome. And the next day, those shoes showed up in his office. And he called him and he was like, I wasn't saying that because I wanted you to give me a pair of shoes. Like, you didn't need to send these. I was just saying I loved them. And he was like, I can't keep these. Let me give them back. And he talked about how DJ AM said to him in that moment, I need you to take these shoes because me doing this for you is what's keeping me sober today. And it was a reminder, or whatever you want to call it, but kind of a light for me that made me realize advocacy holds me accountable. Advocacy pushes me to stay on top of my work. And it also allows me to take something that is so painful and turn it into a purpose. And I hope everybody listening knows that you can have that same opportunity and that you'll be able to take it and engage in it in a way that's meaningful for you, the way it's been meaningful for me.
Thank you, Liz. And it really is, I mean, for so many of us, turning this pain into purpose. And I was so moved the other night when you were on the town hall and really saying that advocacy chose you. And I think that resonates for so many of us. So I'll say just for a second, first of all, I'm honored to be up here with these 5 folks. And I think part of that from my own story comes not all that long ago. In 2018, I went to my first conference and I put the little sticker on my name tag to make sure that they wouldn't take pictures of me and wouldn't put them out anywhere, because I am a chaplain and I'm a minister and I work with 2,700 students in a leadership role. And I was really, really fearful that the pictures would show up somewhere and that somebody would look at me differently. And really in the next year, I had a pretty intense relapse and ended up at the 2019 conference and was still in a place of really struggling and not feeling like I would ever be willing really to share my story with others. And it's so interesting to be here now, 2 years later, doing advocacy with so many of these amazing folks, and being able to move from a place of really navigating both of some of my own personal traumas that some of y'all heard me talk about this weekend at the conference, along with harm OCD, and moving from being just so afraid to a place of being more afraid of giving up my life than the OCD fears actually being true. And I think for me, advocacy has been such a big part of that, from going from where I was just completely terrified and felt so alone for anybody to know, to a space where I get to work with awesome folks like those you see tonight to really make sure that no one has to give up their life to this disorder, and so that we can have just these beautiful lives that we want and that we deserve. So I think for me, the faith and mental health piece is really, really important. And I was so moved at our conference this weekend too, getting to work with our Faith and OCD SIG, which has been going for a little while. But the highlight really for me at the conference was seeing so many folks come on there who unfortunately had been harmed by faith communities. And many of you know, I'm really passionate about faith communities. I think that you can be a Hindu, a Buddhist, a Muslim. You can really hold any faith tradition and you can have OCD and seek that treatment. But unfortunately, for so many in faith traditions, they haven't necessarily felt affirmed to be able to live into their faith while seeking treatment. And being with that group on Sunday at the conference, I was so profoundly moved just by the community that came out of that gathering and the way that individuals were supporting each other and forming connections and loving on each other, and really folks who had never met each other before having that same experience and really being able to say, we can live into our values of faith. We can also seek mental health treatment, and we're all connected on these struggles that we've experienced. And I think it's such a neat thing. And we all work in so many different areas where we get to see that happen. And it makes, as Ethan said before, not that I would want to go back and go through some of the things that I've been through again, but it almost makes it worth it just to get to do this work and to be surrounded by so many awesome advocates. I really wouldn't change it for anything. And just to finish up by kind of going with what Liz said, I've been thinking a lot about different stages of grief. I work with grief often in my job, and I've really been thinking a lot about the additional stage of grief around making meaning. And some of you might be familiar with that. It's Kessler's kind of making meaning stage. And for so many of us, we go through grief as a part of our OCD and as a part of the pieces of our lives that we might have given up. And I think this additional piece in navigating that grief can really come through making meaning out of our life. And for me, that's come through advocacy and getting to make a difference for others, but also connecting with awesome folks like they are in this community. So excited to continue to talk about this a little bit today. And I see that lots of questions are starting to come through. So we're going to go ahead and start to jump into these. And then I have some advocacy questions for our crew as well. I'd love to throw the first one out to Liz, and I'm trying to scroll back up to where this was, but we had a question about the "I'm so OCD" kind of phrase that we constantly see get thrown around. And thank you, Heather. And I would love to hear you address this for us.
Yeah, great. It's a great question, and it's so important that we're talking about this. I remember being in my family's kitchen, sitting around the kitchen table and sitting with my sister saying, okay, like, I want us to make sure it's for peace of mind and we need slogans, but I want to make sure it's slogans that people without OCD will learn something from them. And so she quickly came up with the phrase, OCD is not an adjective. And a lot of us are grateful that we've now seen it all over the place and lots of different people use that phrase, but that's where it originated. So I will give her credit. She would probably want that. Thank you, Laura. No, I'm just kidding. But really, it came from years of advocacy and all of us hearing over and over people say things like, oh, you should meet my coworker. You should see their desk. They're so OCD. Or, oh, you should see my significant other's closet. He's so OCD. Or even things like, I wish I was more OCD and cared more about keeping things clean. And, you know, I get it. It's people don't know, right? They don't understand what they're saying. But for those of us that live with it, we feel that very deeply, right? It is hurtful to us because we would do anything not to have OCD. And we would do anything to not be so OCD, if that's what we're calling it. And so, you know, it was really about, okay, how can we put a phrase out there and start to change the narrative? And I think what I'll say is that it's getting better. We are not perfect. We have a lot of issues that we need to continue to address and change in terms of OCD treatment, OCD advocacy, the understanding, but it has gotten better. And I think the more people like every one of you post and share and educate on what OCD really is, we will get to continue down those stereotypes and stigmas. And what I've learned is that I can't spend too much time being mad, but instead I can educate and hopefully try to change people's perspective and understanding. But there's a lot of misinformation. And, you know, at the end of the day, we just do our best to re-educate.
Thank you.
Katie, if I could add something
Yeah,
real
go
quick
ahead.
too, I wrote an article that I think is coming out for the next newsletter, but to piggyback on a clinical standpoint on this, to add to what Liz was saying, part of my thesis was on this very topic, and it actually is showing that when people stigmatize OCD, it's not only affecting the general public, but it's affecting mental health practitioners. And so because of the minimization and the kind of discounting of OCD, we find that people don't take it as seriously. So it contributes to mental health professionals underdiagnosing and misdiagnosing OCD. It has people with OCD and family members take less of a more kind of urgent step into getting people into care. So the article I wrote kind of really expands and just shows evidence-based research that shows this idea of the minimization of OCD through comments like that. So OCD actually impacts and negatively affects people getting care, people getting diagnosed, and mental health professionals taking it seriously and learning the treatment. So I think that's why this work is so important too, is just so that we can start getting mental health professionals and people diagnosed and getting help, because it is unfortunately negatively impacting that.
Thank you so much, Chris and Liz. And this is something I know that we talk about often in the community, both in ways where there are frustrations. I know every day, even as an educator, where I hear students say, I'm so OCD, or you're so OCD because you did that. And I want to jump out of my skin sometimes and have to take a moment to pause and have a conversation for all the same reasons, Chris, that you're raising, that it really is preventing folks from getting treatment for something that is very much treatable if folks know that it is a legitimate mental illness and diagnosis that can be treated. So thank you.
I want to just
go
really
ahead,
quick, I just want to interject. I think also to think about that what we're doing here right now is going to help, diminish that this is I'm so OCD term, right? Every bit of advocacy that we do, that everybody in the comments does as we come together is going to slowly make a difference. So keep doing what you're doing, because it is helping.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It does help. I'm going to jump in as long as everybody else is. It does help. And I just a quick story. I think the first time I really felt advocacy working, which it's been working for years. Like we're chipping away at this for sure. But we were at a conference and we were having an ambassador meeting. I don't know. This was 5 years ago or something. And there's Alex Rosenberg who does great work for us. He was, I think, 12 or 13 at the time, and we were all sitting in the room, and he went around, we were telling his story, and he really got passionate, and he started telling his story, and then he talked about how it took him 1.5 years to find treatment and how he was so angry at that. And like, I totally felt for him. And at the same time, I'm like, only 1.5 years? Oh my God, we're doing so much better.
Yeah.
Like, it was like 17 years. But it dawned on me. It's like everybody's had different experiences, but it's dawned on me. It's like, that's awesome. Like, it's not awesome. It should take like 20 minutes to find a therapist. But you know what? That's progress. And then it was like, okay, we're making a difference here. And I just, that moment has always stuck out to me. I really love that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's huge. Like when I hear students now that get a diagnosis and are getting ERP within 1 year, it's like things are happening, and it's because of these conversations, and it's really life-changing. So we had a question all the way back at 709, olatization. Part of my OCD fears are interwoven the real event theme and karmic payments. How do I balance both? And Heather, I know you can get that up there at 709. How I'm interpreting this is that there is a little bit of real event kind of OCD happening, but also this aspect of karma or good or bad things happening as a result of the thing that you did that might have some sort of moral tie to it. So I wonder, from a clinical perspective, Chris, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, real event OCD is where, an individual had something happen. Liz and I were just talking about it on our live yesterday. But basically, it's where somebody had an event happen. Usually it's happened in the past. Sometimes there can be a reason it's a little bit blurred, maybe alcohol or a lot of time has passed or something like that. And they get a fear that something happened at that event that was really, really bad. And because of that, they have shame and they hold like this need to have punishment. And so how I'm interpreting the question is like what's tied in with that real event theme is this idea of like, you know, now in my life, I'm getting paid back negatively because of the horrific things I've done. Because I've had some clients kind of loop those two together. Like, of course, these bad things are happening in my life. It's karma for this horrible thing I did. And what Liz and I were talking about is often we see with this subtype, mental compulsions as primary. It doesn't mean there's not physical ones. There's a lot of mental rumination, a lot of playback, a lot of kind of revisiting the past. And if you didn't have OCD, you'd get clarity. That's how we figure things out. But with OCD, the more we go back and we kind of mentally ruminate and try to figure something out, it's like taking a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. It starts to get much blurrier. And then OCD starts putting in those pieces and says, oh, you did this horrific thing and you deserve these kind of karmic payments because of how horrible you were. And just like any OCD, what we really have to start doing is that response prevention. And so it's the acceptance of the unknown. It's learning to tolerate that uncertainty and say, I'm never going to have this aha moment where I walk away and have clarity. So what I'm going to tolerate as I move forward is that I did this thing in the past and I'll never get clarity, and that I'm going to have to sort of live and navigate life with these karmic payments. And once somebody kind of tolerates that and lets that be and takes more of kind of like a passive acceptance route, then they can move forward and just tolerate the uncertainty of what comes out. But just like every other subtype, it's living with that uncertainty and acceptance of the unknown and tolerating the, you know, the distress from not doing the compulsions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I mean, I relate to this. Some folks at the conference heard me talk about false memory type stuff this weekend, but also real event pieces. I'm someone that this has been an issue for me throughout my life, where I might have done something even as a kid that I replay over and over and over again to make sure that I did it in a way that was particularly moral, or what if I did something wrong? I don't talk about it often, but I've navigated that a lot recently from an OCD perspective post a really difficult divorce. And what does that look like? Did I do something wrong? Was I immoral as a part of this process? And for me, sometimes the karma piece looks like intentionally punishing myself by obsessing about it over and over and over again. And I think, just like Chris said, it's been accepting that uncertainty, that I'm never going to have clarity about whether I was right or wrong in that process. And with the karmic piece, if it is something that's happening intentionally, you very much have to stop doing those compulsions in your head to either punish yourself or to continue to check or to make sure you're being punished. And it's just like any other form of ERP. Liz, I wonder if you have any thoughts, since you and Chris were just talking about this.
Yeah, I think that, you know, again, I think real event OCD is, at the end of the day, the same as any other subtype of OCD, right? We treat it the same. We engage in ERP the same way. And I think that sometimes we get stuck on it because for some reason we convince ourselves that it's different. Well, because it's attached to a real event, or because it was rooted in reality somewhere, like it's different. Therefore, it may not be just OCD. Maybe it really is real, right? Remember, OCD is the doubting disease. So it's going to attach doubt to anything, including past events.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you, Liz. So looks like OCD and smells like OCD. It's probably OCD. Even if OCD tells you it's not OCD.
Or it's body odor and then you need deodorant. It's that too. But.
Or that. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. I'm kind of gross. I just finished coaching middle schoolers, so I probably do need deodorant, actually. But okay. So 7:24. We have Meryl, who says, I feel like I have to be fully in recovery in order to be an advocate. Many days are still really challenging. OCD doesn't remotely feel like a thing of the past. What advice do you have? So Val, I wonder what this looks like. Are there times where you still experience struggles that you are navigating advocacy?
Yes, I think it just comes with the territory. We're not cured, of course, and we're all going to have like our up and down days. I try to focus more on the things I'm doing as opposed to what OCD is not allowing me to do to keep moving myself forward. And I've said this oftentimes, I celebrate every single positive thought I have with moving forward. Even if I wake up and say, okay, I'm going to advocate today and I don't do it, I still give myself credit for having the thought. the whole point, I guess, is just to keep moving and be aware that there's no perfect way or bad way to do that, that we're all individuals, so we all have different journeys and experiences. But I just try to stay as positive as I can. And I did not get to that point overnight. It took a while. Like I said, it takes doing the work to get to that point. So stay encouraged.
Thanks, Val.
And you don't have to be, I'm sorry, just read the question. You don't have to be in full recovery, because I don't know if there's any such thing. I could be wrong. I'm not a medical doctor, but no, you don't have to be in recovery. You're, like you say, advocating just by showing up today. You know, we all have our mouth. We could tell someone. And so, you know, there's no wrong or right way to advocate, in a sense.
And Ethan, I was going to turn it over to you anyway, so go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing about the conference, to what Valerie said last, which is, you know, it's great to be around so many folks. And it may be a little bit harder in a virtual space, although there was lots of chatting going on. But when you're at the physical conference in Denver next year, see you there. It's awesome to talk to, you know, panelists in the audience, and you may look at them and be like, wow, they really have it together and they're doing really great. And then you talk to them and they're like, actually, I'm really struggling right now. And you're like, wait a second, but you just did that. And, you know, so you really get a sense of, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Just a super quick story. And I did my other one pretty quick, so I'm on a roll here. But you know, Meryl, I started like publicly advocating in 2011, 2012, but in 2014 is sort of when I came out nationally and gave my keynote speech. And about 5 or 6 months prior, or no, probably 4 or 5 months before I gave that speech, and I'd already been chosen to give it, I started having a really rough time with my OCD. It flared back up. And I just remember going into my therapist's office and sitting down and going, first thing I said is like, I can't do this keynote. There's no way I can do this keynote. I mean, I'm struggling right now. How am I supposed to get up there and tell all these people to like do their ERP? And here's this giant journey. And now I'm like completely stuck in my head, and I'm compulsing, and I'm obsessing. Like, there's no way I can do this, you know? And I remember my therapist, who's still my therapist, you know, just, we kind of talked it through, and it's like, you know, it's not about being well for the rest of your life and now you're great and you're perfect. And, you know, it's about the process, the journey, the ups and downs of OCD, and bringing that along with you. And I have to be honest, Meryl, you know, for all of us, I think the most important thing in advocacy is vulnerability and sharing, you know, the ups and the downs. It's what makes it relatable. It's what makes it meaningful, and it keeps all of us honest. And I mean, you know, I don't want anybody to suffer. I don't want to suffer. But honestly, some of the most beautiful moments I've had advocating is sharing something that I've just been through. It's a connection point. We all deal with struggle. We all deal with pain. We all deal with heartache, you know, and there are always silver linings and beautiful lessons to be learned from those things. And so, you know, Katie always talks about, you know, the beauty from the brokenness, and she has an analogy about a broken vase and light coming through the cracks. And it's really lovely when she says it, not so much when I say it. But regardless, you know, it's all part of the advocacy, and it really makes it special. So no, you don't have to be in full recovery. Wherever you are, you know, advocacy can meet you wherever you are in your journey.
Thank you. I'd love to throw this to Tom too. Tom, I have a feeling you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started advocating when I was about 17. I spoke for OCD Connecticut, and I was in the middle of my treatment. And I think, honestly, advocacy helped me. Like Liz said, it made me want to work harder, made me want to go to ERP, and it motivated me. But then also, similar to Ethan, when I accepted the Hero Award in 2019, that plane ride to Texas, I was struggling with my OCD mightily. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, who am I to go accept this Hero Award when I'm dealing with awful OCD symptoms, and I'm going to get up and accept an award for it? And it almost felt like I felt like a fraud, right? I felt like I was supposed to be this poster boy for OCD fully in recovery, and here I am accepting this award, but actually struggling behind the scenes. So it just goes to show that just because we're on this virtual event and you're seeing our faces a lot, it doesn't mean, and I'm not going to speak for the rest of the group, it doesn't mean that I don't struggle, or that we don't struggle, and people that you see advocating don't struggle. And I think, like Ethan, Katie, and Liz have said, I think, and Val said, I think that showing that vulnerability makes us better advocates.
Mm-hmm.
And I think makes us more authentic advocates. And I think that's what makes this community special, is that people are really honest and share their vulnerabilities with each other.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's helped in my recovery in some ways in terms of accountability too. I know even the conference this weekend, shortly before one of the talks I was doing, I was having a tough time with my OCD, and Ethan can attest to that. I was asking for reassurance, and there was some stuff that I was really struggling with this weekend. And I know so many of us navigate this imposter syndrome of, well, who am I to get on and give this talk when I'm struggling? And one, I'm still an advocate and still can do that, even if I feel like that. But two, I think it really helped to be able to get on and share with others, here's the things that we need to do to fight our OCD. And it kind of gives me a kick in the pants to say, like, okay, Katie, you're advocating, you're sharing this with others. You can be struggling and advocate. Oh, and also you can do this when you're struggling, just like you're telling others they can. So Meryl, I would say you can be an advocate even when you're struggling. You can continue to strive to get better. You can help others to get better, and your advocacy can really be a part of your recovery journey. And that's a beautiful thing. So I want to jump down to Beth at 726. I just want to read this really quick, because I think it kind of answers Meryl's question too about continuing to get better and advocating, because Beth has been advocating on a lot of these streams and says, I'm able to do better. I'm able to strive to do more because of this group. I've done many ERPs that have been a 10 on a scary scale. This group, as well as my therapist, has helped me achieve more in a couple of months than I have been able in a year and a half. Thank you. And I love that. And that's just like, congratulations, Beth. And that's just, I think, so much hope for anyone who sees that too. And Beth, by sharing that on here as a part of your journey, you are advocating just like so here. So thank you. That's awesome. Okay, so our next question, let's see, we have at 7:36, I believe. And this isn't framed like a question, but I actually want to ask this. So Jay says, I'd like to request a video explaining the complex issue of getting teletherapy across state lines. And I would love to actually ask, we've had a lot of questions about this lately, about what does teletherapy look like? Is this just as effective as therapy in person? What does that mean? What does that look like? Ethan, who are you pointing to?
I was pointing at Liz and
Yes.
Liz and Chris,
they're down here.
It's all backwards, so I couldn't figure it out. It's
and they're not even up there. They're like over here for me.
I was like, I'm not a doctor.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know who you were going for. Okay, Liz, would you like to chat about teletherapy and what that looks like?
Sure, happy to hop in. And Jay, this is a great question. And what I'll say is that the COVID pandemic, despite all the bad things that it's caused, I do think it has opened the door in our understanding for the way teletherapy can impact and help those with mental health conditions, especially OCD. There is a conglomerate group called SIPAC, where psychologists can be a part of SIPAC, which does allow them to practice across multiple state lines. And there are quite a few states in the country that are a part of SIPAC. So there are different ways that we can practice across state lines. Some of us do work to try to get licensed in other states. And then because of COVID, there has been some emergency use and options of reciprocity where we can practice across state lines. I think that we're not really talking about COVID, we're talking about long-term, but what I hope is that because of COVID, we will start to see the utility in that, because what we know is that it's much more important to see an OCD specialist than to have to see someone in your state if you don't have access to an OCD specialist. There are, of course, apps and programs and groups that do work really hard to make virtual programming available across state lines. So it does exist more now than it ever has before. You can actually go to IOCDF.org, and on there we have a list of all of the groups that are offering teletherapy and what that looks like. So it is available, it is getting better. As far as the efficacy, I don't think there has been any published research that's any sort of like true like a not to say true, but that's a big enough group for us to say definitively, right, teletherapy is just as effective as ERP. But I think anecdotally, both Chris and I would tell you we're seeing it work just as well. And we have no reason to believe that teletherapy is not effective. Some of the previous research told us that doing ERP in session first posed better outcomes if you started that way, then you moved to tele. But I think we've both seen amazing success rates, and we've seen ERP work beautifully through the use of teletherapy. But Chris, I'll throw it to you as well.
Yeah, there was actually 2 studies on this. It wasn't big enough sample sizes, so I think that's what Liz is alluding to, because unfortunately that's why we need more OCD money for research. But they did do 2 studies specifically for OCD and telehealth and found that it was just as effective. I know a lot of clinicians are liking it because we can actually be in the house that the person's struggling with, or we can be somewhere where they're specifically triggered by. So a lot of people are liking telehealth. It's also allowing a lot of people to get access to treatment that they couldn't get treatment before because they lived in maybe a rural area or a state like Alaska where there's little to no treatment. One of my professors in graduate school is part of the BBS board, and I know she's put forth legislation in California to try to fix this, where people can start working across state lines. It's a pretty archaic reason. It was because back in the past, when you'd work with a client, if they were on a suicide watch or if they were going to harm themselves, you were to be close by so you could step in and you knew the local resources. But as time has progressed, the laws haven't. And so now, if you're doing telehealth in California, I can have somebody in a different state be closer to me than in California. So it's pretty old legislation. Some of it is also finance or money, because the state gets money if you see a therapist in the state. So there's a lot of people trying to do work. Like Liz said, because of COVID, it's opened up a lot of emergency usage, and now we can see people in different countries, different states. And I don't think that's going to go away. It's been too useful and helpful in getting people in marginalized communities in low income areas and for OCD getting therapy. So I really do think that if we keep pushing it and there's legislation, I know the IOCDF is doing a challenge right now, and I believe one of the bills that they're trying to support is specifically impacting this. So I'd encourage everybody. I don't know the link, so hopefully Heather will put it up, but it's the one that you tagged me in, Katie, and I actually did it last night. I had a face mask and pajamas, so I couldn't post a picture. But if we can get your signatures and support, this is going to help so many people get treatment that can't get it.
Thank you.
You posted that picture, and I would like to see that picture regardless.
Well, Chelsea tagged me, and then she's like, post it, you doing it, because I sent her like the screen that I had done it. I'm like, Chelsea, I have this green face mask, and I'm in pajamas. I'm like, nobody wants to see that.
I do.
So.
Yeah, contrary, we all want to see that, Chris.
I know, yeah. Jeff posted his teal nails, so maybe I need to get some courage and post that.
Oh my gosh, I love that. But that is a really good plug for folks to go on and to participate in that, because it really the legislation is really, really important. And I mean, I would say mine was not across state lines, but I did teletherapy essentially for all of my treatment after relapsing, because for job reasons and because of location. And it was very much life-saving for me. And I think we all have different experiences, but it's so important for everyone to be able to have access to the types of treatment that they need as a part of where they are and where they are with treatment and as a part of their life. So I see a question at 7:36 from Bobby. And Bobby, first of all, I'm so sorry. It says, I have contamination in checking, predominantly OCD, and recently have been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I do not like medication in my body, and it's causing my OCD to skyrocket during my chemotherapy. Any thoughts on dealing with this? And first of all, I'm so sorry about your cancer diagnosis. And as a part of this being a night on community, please know that you are a part of the OCD community and that we love and care about you and are sending all sorts of positive vibes. And I'm sure would like updates from you after this. You can always reach out to us. But in terms of your question, I'd love to throw that to Liz first, if you have any thoughts.
You know, I think, Bobby, despite your diagnosis, which I'm terribly sorry for, there is still ways that you could do effective OCD treatment around these fears. Particularly, I'm thinking about ERP, right? And it's probably really important for you medically to be taking the medications that you're prescribed. While it might be triggering, what ERP can do is free you from that being a trigger, so that you can engage in the living you need to be living, without OCD interfering. And so I would recommend, no matter what, still seeking out an OCD provider and working with them so that you don't have to be dealing with feeling triggered and the anxiety and distress that comes with OCD along with your diagnosis you're currently dealing with.
Thanks, Liz. Are there any other thoughts on this from anybody here?
I kind of have a thought, especially because I suffer so much from the health anxiety of the OCD. And I know for myself, when I really started working or looking at myself, my biggest fear, I couldn't even say the word cancer because I had such a fear that even if I said it, I was going to get it. And I remember my therapist, my OCD specialist, asked me one day, where did I want to be in 20 years? And I remember thinking, well, not here. I don't want to do 20 more days of living with the fear of getting sick and all the stuff that goes with it. And so I started my ERP by myself under her guidance because my HMO no longer, covered it like they used to do in the old days. They would go with you. But I know for me, I just tried to go step by step, minute by minute, day by day. And one of the things I was not able to accomplish, Bobby, was to go sit in a cancer center because that was my biggest fear. The farthest I got was to the parking lot, but it was like, okay, I'm okay with that because I just learned just not to beat myself up when I wasn't able to do certain things, but it's something that I still struggle with daily. And that's why I kind of wanted to chime in. I'm doing my own ERP right now because it was like, I couldn't even hear the word, or I would leave the room if it was even brought up. And so I encourage you, Bobby, your transparency is definitely helping me. And I'm sure many people out there, and I'll just say, we'll be praying for you.
I'm gonna add something. I had 3 months of college, so I think it's appropriate for me to talk here. I think that I'm gonna piggyback on what Liz said, Bobby, and I'm gonna pick up on a word that you said in your sentence or in your question, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but what Liz said is really important. I'm going to emphasize it because you said during my chemotherapy, which tells me that you're doing the chemotherapy, you're putting medication into your body, right? And so for so many people, let's say somebody has a fear of medication and they're just going to the doctor and they will not take a pill, right? At the top of their hierarchy, it's like, all right, we're going to get you to take a pill. That's what you need to do. So we're going to move you up to that. You're already doing it. And I think what's causing so much of the distress, right, is the white knuckling of it. And it's the idea of like the OCD and not knowing how to deal with it. You're choosing to do it, which is already like you're halfway there, right? So the powerful thing about what Liz said is now this is about the cognitive therapy portion. This is about like reframing your brain and what are you going to tell yourself now that you're already doing this thing? So it's not so much, oh my God, it's more like, can I be okay with this discomfort? Can I be okay with this anxiety? Your value is life. You're choosing. You're making such an incredibly hard decision, and you're already doing it. So then the question becomes is how can I reframe my thinking around this thing that I'm already doing that's already triggering to inevitably make that quieter and quieter. So I would say you're already halfway there just in the doing. You're already making a value-driven decision, right? It's just about changing your way of thinking. So to Liz's point, like engaging in that ERP, would be so effective for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that Ethan, I love what you said, and I also am not a clinician, but what I will say is, I don't talk about it often. My mom has an incurable type of blood cancer that we've been navigating for quite a while, and I've watched her go through a really, really challenging treatment journey, and the stress and the anxiety that comes with that for her on a daily basis is really tough for her to manage and sometimes really tough for me to watch. And I just want you to know that navigating that diagnosis and that treatment along with OCD, even if you feel like your OCD is skyrocketing, the fact that you're navigating that each and every day and is just, you're a rock star. You're awesome. And please do not ever forget how strong you are just by being on here and asking the question and navigating OCD along that. And know that every single day that you're getting out and living into your values in any way, shape, or form, that you're doing it and you're winning, and we're so proud of you. So that's just, please know that too.
Katie,
Chris,
if I
did you
could,
want to add something?
yeah, I just wanted to add two little things real quick. I know, Bobby, you said that you really don't like medication in your body. I mean, I grew up, my mom's a registered dietitian, and I grew up, it's definitely not my child. I'm all baby. What? No. But I know for me personally, like I grew up, my mom's, registered dietitian, and we just grew up where it was like, if you had a headache, you'd put on a cold, washcloth on your head and go to bed. Like we just didn't take Advil. We didn't take medication. So I know for me, like taking medication was probably the hardest part of my journey. And I went the first 6 months of treatment without. And like you, Bobby, like I just didn't want to put it in my body. I just grew up in that mindset. But I recognized that there hit a point where not taking the medication was causing more of a strain on my life than maybe the medication possibly could. So I found a psychiatrist that I really trusted, Dr. Jamie Fusner, who works at the USC and now, or UCLA, and now works for NoCD, but really sat down and talked to me and answered my questions. And I felt comfortable and started slow. And it ended up being a huge thing that ended up skyrocketing my treatment and got me to where I was. And I'm not on medication anymore. And I think that was also something, was knowing that you don't have to be on it for life. And then I was going to lastly add, I don't really talk about it that much, but right after my treatment finished, I have an autoimmune disease I've had since a kid, and it got really bad after my OCD treatment to where there was like days and weeks where I wasn't eating and I couldn't leave the bed. And it's incurable. It's something I deal with my whole life. But I know that for me, it was really difficult having that and still fighting OCD at the same time. So I just want to give you some sympathy, not empathy, because I don't know what it's like to live through cancer, but some empathy when you're dealing with kind of like another ailment on top of it. And the biggest suggestion I can give you is some days it's going to be response prevention days. You just don't have the energy to get up and get out of bed and fight and do huge 10 exposures, but at least making sure that you're staying above water and preventing OCD from backsliding. So I know it's really difficult, but I recognize that just like if I had an autoimmune disease and another physical ailment, I'd challenge both. I had to do the same with OCD. So don't let OCD come back full force, because then it's going to make fighting the other disease, in your case, cancer, even more hard.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris and Bobby. We really are thinking about you and sending you all sorts of good vibes and prayers.
Good vibes only.
Good vibes only.
Only good vibes.
Yes, actually, well, it's funny. I tell my students all the time when they say that it is not good vibes only. It is whatever vibe you're bringing to the table, and you're allowed to feel however it is that you want to feel. And if it's not a good vibe today, that's okay too. So just putting that out there. Any feelings are okay feelings.
Oh my God, I know who Bobby says that he loves my mom. So that's two of us. And he helps out for OCD SoCal events in
3 of us.
Orange County from Riverside. So thank you so much, Bobby. We love your support with OCD Southern California.
I too love your mom.
Lots of people love your mom, Chris. Whatever.
Yes.
Okay, y'all. So we have a great advocacy question that actually is something I wanted to ask y'all too. So I'd love to go around and just take a minute or so with everybody. So thank you. Wow, Chelsea knew what I was going to say even before I said it. So Mateo said,
it's Heather.
Heather.
No, I said, oh, I'm sorry, Heather. We love you. Thank you, Heather. So a bird's eye view question to the whole panel. Where is advocacy headed to as a movement? Are there particular topics or themes that could or should be addressed from now on? And this also might be a really great opportunity if y'all want to talk a little bit about your particular areas of advocacy and the things that you're doing as a part of your kind of chalk it up to values, the things that are important to you and where you're going with that. So Chris, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, speaking of like the things that I'm passionate about, so I'll talk about what I'm passionate about, and then maybe as a whole, when I started attending the conferences, my mom is watching and she says she loves everybody too. Oh, hi, Mom.
Hi, Liz. We love you.
I'm just happy she figured out technology. Yay.
Chris thought only one other person loved you. Not true.
Yes.
Love you, Mom. I mean, I think for me, when I started attending the conferences when I was really young, a lot younger, there wasn't a lot of topics for young adult issues. There was a lot of stuff for kids. There were some great activities for the conference for children, but or adults, and there's this young adult kind of gap that was sort of missing. And so going to the IOCDF, them being really receptive and building up a young adult track and young adult conversations at the conference, and then this huge young adult event last night. So I think that's huge. It's just, a lot of young adults come into OCD treatment feeling lost and not sure what their kind of next kind of stages are. Sorry. Kind of lost and not knowing what their next stages are. So I love the young adult stuff that Tommy's helped with, and that Kyle King and Meg Daly and Caroline are doing. So there's a lot of good stuff for young adults. I'm also really passionate about body dysmorphic disorder. It was an honor to do that Vice article on it recently, or actually it came out today, but making sure that the IOCDF is still kind of the go-to place for BDD support. And I know the BDD SIG, we're having a meeting soon. So I'm really excited about that. And then just, being inspired in yesterday's meeting with the LGBTQ young adults and just opening up about how the intersection of LGBTQ issues and OCD kind of really gave them almost like a second kind of struggle on that. And so just for me, those three areas right now are sort of what I'm really pushing. But lastly, what I always have said with advocacy as a whole is that I cannot wait for the day when mental health is treated with the same kind of urgency and seriousness that physical health is. And so, I have a nephew with autism. There's so much going on in the autism space, and I'd love for that for OCD. I'd love for there to be affiliates all over a local community. I'd love for there to be legislation that makes insurance cover OCD treatment. So I think we have some great voices. I think we have some really strong advocates, and my hope is to just continue with legislation, building community, and then addressing those kind of subgroups of OCD that really need some extra care, like the LGBTQ communities, et cetera.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Tom, do you want to share a little bit about what you're doing and where advocacy is
Yeah. Well, I also just want to piggyback on what Chris was saying. I think yesterday, it was probably one of the most surreal moments for me. And I'm sure for Chris too. Chris and I have worked on the young adult track for a while now. And Chris found me when I came to a conference and got up and rambled on one of his young adult talks. And then, 5 years, for the next 5 years, we were working together. Now, as he takes care of BDD, that SIG, and the LGBTQ SIG, I start diving into anxiety in athletes, we've kind of leaned on some other people for the young adult track, in Kyle King, Caroline, and Meg Daly. And it was such like a proud, older sibling moment, where Chris always says, when I had my Hero Award speech, he called that a proud older sibling moment, because he has been like a brother. And for me, it was just seeing how well they put together that event. It just made me feel how excited I am for them, and knowing how great of hands we're in with the young adult track going forward. With me and Chris still being involved, but letting Kyle and Caroline and Meg really take the lead. It was really, really exciting to see all those young adults coming together, and it was bringing me so many flashbacks and nostalgia to the same groups that Chris had put together and that I had helped him with, and it was really, really encouraging. And as for myself, the area that I'm most passionate about now is really anxiety in athletes. We were able, within 4 months of signing on to be a lead advocate, we were able to put together a website with resources for parents, athletes, coaches, administration, and we want to make sure that athletes are heard, and that stigma in athletics is really diminished around mental health. Having been a college strength coach for 5 years, I was around a lot of toxic macho man culture that I couldn't really bear to witness anymore. It was something that it was kind of a shut up, work harder attitude. And if you had feelings, you were weak. If you showed your feelings, you were weak. If you wore your heart on your sleeve, you were weak. And to me, that is toxic culture that forced a lot of people that I know to never seek help with that had anxiety disorders and that struggle with OCD. And it definitely forced me to never seek help in high school. And then getting through college in a situation where I was bullied because of my OCD, I never want any athlete to have to go through that with a coach again. And so the more we can keep breaking that stigma down in athletics and encouraging people to seek that help, and that they won't be punished for it by losing a scholarship or losing playing time, because these are real things they worry about, because they're worried that they're going to be looked at differently, and they're going to be not taken as seriously as a student athlete. So for me, I want to really make that push. And if you're interested, definitely reach out and visit anxietyinathletes.org. So that's really where I'm making that push, and I'm very, very lucky and fortunate to have the IOCDF behind me with that.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you always for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. And I love everything that you shared for what you and Chris have been working on with the young adults group and seeing that come together. It's just so cool. It's really, really awesome.
Yeah.
Liz, do you want to share a little bit? Liz, I keep getting confused. This sounds really random, but the piano arm, it makes it look like your arm is up like this, and then I keep seeing your hand come up. And so I'll see this, and I feel like you're like this, and then I see a hand, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? But
sorry, I'll move over there. That's crazy.
I think we all just wanted a better view of the piano, to be honest.
yeah, exactly, right. Advocacy as a movement. No, I mean, I think advocacy as a movement is going where we want it to go, right? What we know is that advocacy is directed by us, and advocacy shifts the way we shift. What I will say is that the younger generation, and right now we have more people talking about mental health, educating one another about mental health than ever before. And so my goal is that it can continue to get louder, but also with proper education. I think sometimes advocacy for mental health is loud, but it may not always be the right resources, the right education, the right tools. And it's our job to make sure that's the only thing I'll push. It's okay if we're struggling when we're advocates, right? That makes it real. That makes us honest. It makes us human. But what's not okay is if we're spreading misinformation. And I think that it's really important as advocates, that's the lens we always want to make sure in the lane we're staying within. And so I think the biggest topic I want us to address is misinformation about mental health, about OCD, and to continue to be loud about that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Liz. Val, do you want to address this really quick also?
Yes, I'm excited because I personally can see the movement in some of the stereotypes and the stigma that's been associated with OCD being further along. I know change takes time. For me, of course, I'm just super excited. I cannot express how having the first Faith Anxiety Conference, what it meant to me as an individual, and especially with that conference being geared toward different people of color, that has been like the pinnacle of my advocacy at this moment. I don't think I've never been as proud, as scared, as excited for something to take fruition that it did. And so I'm just so grateful to the foundation for seeing the need and listening to my concerns and addressing and acknowledging all of those things, so I can see where, as an advocate, I can see more people of color being interested. I see it simply when we do a town hall or from letters. So all those things are super exciting for me. I still like to stress the need for the body of church bodies or the bodies of faith and worship centers kind of be a little bit more open and willing to listen to and to acknowledge that OCD is a medical diagnosis. It's not in our heads. And so my continual advocating will always be in that arena with women kind of on the sidelines. But as a Christian and as a Black woman, those are primary my concerns of keeping that movement going. And I'm just so appreciative because I can see the change. Change is slow, but it's coming. And like Liz said, I think it's so important that when we do advocate, we advocate with knowledge. Because when I first started advocating, I think I was just out there, you get so excited, but I had to really slow myself down and do some personal research on what was going on with OCD, because I had no idea. I said that many a times. I always thought OCD was more like a white person, rich person kind of disorder. And I think it's important as an advocate, especially when it comes to communities of color and communities of faith, that they get the right information, and that will take us continuing to be advocates. But change is coming.
Katie, same question.
Katie, you're muted.
Sorry, it was because I was getting something with the cat, but thank you. Thank you for asking me. And I think that the themes that should be addressed with advocacy, honestly, are the themes that all of you want to see addressed based on the things that you've experienced and the things that you've navigated and the passions that you have. I think, we're in this week of focusing on our values and chalk it up to values. And I think moving forward and where advocacy is heading is really wherever all of you want it to head, with the things that are important to you and the values that you have, and both the areas that OCD is latched onto, but also the things that are important to you that you want to use to really overcome OCD and kick it in the pants so that you can get back to that life that you want and the life that you deserve. So for me, a lot of that has to do with faith, and have some overlap with Val here. And the work with the IOCDF with advocacy has just been so much fun for me. We have our faith and OCD task force and our special interest group, which is continuing to grow, and are getting ready to come out with a whole new website for clinicians and for faith leaders and individuals navigating faith and OCD, to really help folks from particular faith backgrounds navigate what religious scrupulosity might look like, how to have those conversations with both a clinician and a faith leader and other congregants. I mean, so many different things. And I'm really, really just excited about that area of advocacy, and always here for folks who want to reach out and chat about that. Also really excited just about creative ways to do advocacy. I have a little bit of overlap with Tom with some of the athletic pieces. I'm an athlete, and I'm getting ready to tackle 50 ultra marathons in 50 states to raise money for folks seeking treatment for OCD. Ethan's shaking his head because that means he has to go to all of those races, which is super, super excited about. But for me, it really is about combining a passion that I have with OCD advocacy, and really doing something kind of neat with that. And I think really not even about the faith and OCD piece, or about the running 50 ultra marathons for OCD, which you do not have to do, but you can if you want to come do any with me. You're more than welcome to join me. But it's really about, I think, you finding the things that you're passionate about and helping to steer the advocacy movement, because that's what it's about. It's about this community. I mean, it's so neat to spend time with the IOCDF and to come on here with us, but you can take your advocacy into all of these other areas that you care about, whether that's your school. I know for me, that's an ultra community. I know with me, that's grad school and getting to share with others who are clergy. But I think the advocacy movement is moving wherever it is that you all want it to move, and wherever you take it. And that's been a really cool realization for me, that faith and athletics and all of these things can be a part of where the advocacy movement's going. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I hit.
You totally skipped Ethan.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, Ethan. You asked me, so I forgot that you didn't go. Go ahead, Ethan. Where's advocacy going for you, and what do you do, Ethan?
Pretty much sums up everything, doesn't it, Katie? I've always been. I agree with everything everybody said. I don't know that I have a lot to add, other than my original goal for advocacy was to show people that OCD wasn't what they thought it was. I came armed with this video that my therapist took of me over days of me at my worst doing ERP. I would say, no, don't film me. And she's like, you'll appreciate this one day. And I was like, get it out of my face. And lo and behold, I did. Here I had this video of me looking half of what I am today. Not the same person. And I was like, wow, I don't think anybody knows that OCD looks like this, that it looks physically painful, mentally painful, that it involves crying, almost looking delusion. I mean, nobody knows. I said, I want this out there. I want people seeing this. I don't care. I just want people to see this and understand, what it is. And that's what started it. At the end of the day, OCD is so multifaceted, like any other disorder. And I would like to undo the stigma around everybody assuming that they know what OCD is, right? Because for me, that's where it starts. I don't know that we could ever, genuinely, I don't know that we could ever possibly do every subtype and specific symptom and related disorder justice of giving it the amount of attention each one honestly deserved, because whatever you're going through, it's valid, it's painful, it's uncomfortable. What I would like is when OCD comes up, to somebody say in their head, I know that's a disease. I know that can be painful. I'd like to know more about what you're going through. When somebody says we have cancer, and we didn't, obviously, Bobby, we're respecting his privacy, but I know when my mom says, oh, so-and-so has cancer, my first question is what type? I'm like, I don't know all the types of cancer, but my first question is, oh, I know that's bad. What? Give me more specific. And I want to learn more about it. But with OCD, there's still this idea of like, oh, that cleaning thing, whatever. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Right. So I want to get to a place where people are like going, oh, I'm so sorry. What kind of OCD do you deal with? And like somebody could say pedophilia, be like, oh, I know that's really hard. I hope you're getting ERP. Like, wouldn't that be a great conversation on an airplane? You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to get to that place. That's where I'm passionate about getting to. And so that's it.
Thank you, Ethan. And I'm glad I didn't skip you, because that was a great answer. So thank you. I wonder if, and I think we were able to get through all of the questions that we have here, and we don't have all that much time left. So I'd love to just go around and have everyone share with this theme of community. If there's anyone on here tonight who's watching, anybody who has been participating throughout the conference, anyone who's been participating in OCD Awareness Week, if you had one or two pieces of advice for somebody who's like, oh, how do I get involved in the OCD community? Or how do I start advocating? I'm on the stream for the first time. How do I jump in? What advice might you give them in terms of beginning to plug in? Chris?
Yeah, I'm always going to sound like a broken record, but I am so passionate about our affiliates. I mean, what we've been able to do, and it's definitely not just my mom and I. I mean, right now we have a board of 10 members, and we have so many great volunteers that show up to every event that we have. I was so honored to have all of you, except Katie, but we'll figure it out next time, but have everybody else on this panel be the keynotes. And I mean, still getting messages just from, new parents being touched by like what Liz talked about, and, the stuff that, Valerie talked about with her journaling, and really opening up with that. And I think, Ethan, everybody in the community always feels like that them by name and you're so connected with them. And then Tom, so many people are outraged and moved by your story of all the triumph that you've had to overcome. And I love our affiliates. I mean, OCD SoCal has been able to kind of create this family down here in Southern California where we have events and we know people are going to show up. And we've done, carnivals with bounce houses and water balloon tosses, and see kids like come who all have OCD, and they're doing watermelon eating contests together and exchanging numbers and like becoming friends. And it's like, one of my kid clients is like, I have my school friends and my dance friends and my OCD friends. And it's like, God, I mean, we didn't have that. It's like I didn't make my first friend with OCD until I started going to the conference. So, for me, I think the biggest way that you can advocate is to find a local affiliate in your area. There are a lot of affiliates started by people with OCD. You don't have to be a clinician. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be that. And so the affiliates in your area, like Tom talked about his first talk being with OCD Connecticut, it gives you a chance to kind of connect with an organization that's really taking the IOCDF's mission statement and putting it in a local area. And you're going to meet so many other people doing great work in schools and doing conferences and walks and everything like that. So I'd say that is one of my big things. I think for a lot of people, specifically people that really enjoy social media, it gives you a platform to advocate where maybe you couldn't do it before. Traditional media, you'd have to wait for them to reach out, but now you can advocate on that level. And then lastly, what I want to say is don't diminish. You don't have to speak at a national conference like we do. You don't have to be a part of an affiliate and be on the front lines for the Million Steps for OCD March. Talking to a sister, to a friend, opening up to a neighbor, or just sharing with someone close to you about what you're going through and your struggles and how you're overcoming it is going to educate one more person about OCD, and that's advocacy. So get involved no matter how you do it. That's what we hope you do.
Thank you, Chris. And I see some folks that are in the chat trying to get affiliates started or trying to find a local affiliate. And I know we can also put a link in the chat for finding your local affiliate as well and ways to get plugged into that.
Yeah, and we need to connect, Bobby, because we have a therapist in Riverside that's becoming active. So we'd love to connect you. So email us, Bobby, at info@ocdsocal.org.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay, Ethan, I'm calling on you for real this time.
Yeah, just real quick. As long as we're talking about ways to advocate, Heather, if you could post Jeff's comment at 8:24, just so we can get a good look at his toes. He said dare to share. I may regret asking you to do this, but okay. So there you go. That is our exec director of the IOCDF, Jeff Szymanski.
Are you wearing Christmas pajamas?
He's wearing Christmas pajamas.
It's October.
Great
October.
Great point, Liz. I don't know what I'm distracted by more.
They were already on sale at CVS.
I know. He just said
October.
I know. He just said, forget Halloween.
Yay,
Thanksgiving
Jeff.
don't matter. We're going straight to Christmas pajamas.
Is your tree up too?
All right. So that was fun. So what was your question, Katie?
It was I don't how do people advocate?
Cool.
Get involved in
Yeah,
community?
no. You know what? I mean, I sound like a broken record too. Two things, it's all about your personal story, and that's not true. I mean, it is about your personal story, and sharing your story is important. It doesn't mean that you have to share your personal story to advocate, right? You can advocate about OCD education and not have to divulge who you are, what you're going through, everything like that. The first thing I always say is identify your passion. What are you passionate about within the OCD community? Your own personal journey, whether it's Chris and the the queer the population. Thank you. God, I couldn't think of the name. Thank you.
We need to come up with something that rolls off your tongue. There's too many syllables. We got to figure that out.
I know.
Yeah.
I was saying it earlier, and I was like, "Oh gosh, I'm gonna mess this up."
Look, I'm part of it, and sometimes I forget letters, so we got to work on that.
So anyway, I'll make this quick, but find your passion. I really like just talking to people one-on-one. I think that's such a powerful way to advocate. And also, to piggyback on Chris's affiliates, I love support groups too. If you want a safe space to share your story, to feel what that feels like telling to somebody that you may not know, but do it in a safe way. A support group is such a great place to do that, because you're with like-minded people that maybe have something to learn from what you have to share. You'll learn from other people. It's a really good place to start. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thanks, Ethan. How about you, Val?
Start where you're at. I'm still laughing at you. My very first conscious act of advocating, like I said, was to polish my toenails teal. And it was almost like an act of defiance, because, we were missing in our faces were missing within the OCD community, meaning people of color. So it was kind of my own little personal, saying that I'm important sort of thing that I did. And so I started personally with myself, advocating for myself that I was going to be heard, and, I'm not going to remain faceless and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of grew from that simple little ideal, where I took that ideal once my courage got better. And I think the very first person that I gave a bottle of teal nail polish to was a cashier. And during I think it was during the month of May. And I had bought something, and I was terrified, how can I get people to start polishing their toenails or their fingernails? And it was simple. It was like, hey, this is blah, 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 blah. Could you wear the polish for me for a day? And so I'm trying to say that simple idea, that simple thought, end up blooming into a whole campaign for OCD. So just start wherever you're at. There's nothing too big or too small. I kind of agree with everything with Chris and Ethan has said. That's why I'm kind of stumbling, because I'm lost for words. They took all the good ideas. But there's no wrong or right way to begin. There's a wrong or right way to advocate. like Liz was saying, we want to make sure our message is clear, but start where you're at, small or big, doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And even if you just start for yourself.
Mhm. Awesome. Thanks, Val. And I know we're almost out of time, but just want to throw this to Tom and then to Liz really quick too, because I know y'all have some stuff to say on how to get into advocacy.
Yeah, I'll make this real quick. I mean, I think, like Chris said, start at your affiliate, get involved in what you're most passionate about. Passion will drive you to lead you to places you didn't think you'd be. I ever thought that I would be alongside 5 of my mentors. You know what I mean? It's something that I never thought that I would be here. So make sure that whatever you do, you follow your heart with advocacy, and make sure that you're doing it for the right reason, which is, even if it's one person you're helping, that's one less person that is hurting or feels alone, or is educated to help that next person that they meet. So it's a snowball effect. So don't worry about starting so big. You can start small, because that matters just as much.
100%. And I'll hop in to just say advocacy starts right here, right now. Every single one of you that is participating, watching, a part of this panel, you're advocating. You are a part of education. You're a part of an OCD community. It doesn't have to be large. Advocacy matters the most when it impacts one person. And as soon as it does, it will help you understand the meaning and the beautiful recovery that can happen for all of us with OCD when we're able to help somebody else because of our illness. So whatever you're doing an amazing job. Keep it up, and we cannot wait to be a part of your advocacy journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's great to just leave it with that, y'all. This is like Tom said, I'm surrounded by 5 folks that I've looked up to, and it's just such an honor to be here in advocacy with all of them, but also with all of you here in the chat. And for me, going from a place in 2018 where I didn't want anybody to know that I was even at the conference, to being in a place where right now I'm writing an article on OCD for my favorite theological magazine. So I went from like nobody in the church can know to literally everyone in the church is going to know. And but for me, it was starting really small. And I think some of the most meaningful things that you can do are just starting to talk to a friend or a family member. For some of you, it might be social media. For some of you, it might be conversation. It can be so many different things. And like Liz said, y'all are advocating here tonight, and we're just happy to be a part of your journey. So as we close out, just a quick reminder, which I think many of you know, that we are in OCD Awareness Week right now. So we are bringing awareness to OCD tonight and all throughout the week. So yay. And you can head to iocdf.org/OCD week to see all of the events that we have planned. A big one tomorrow night that Ethan will, what?
I just saw my mom commented, so I just had to give her a shout out real quick.
The Price is Right.
And Ethan will be leading us tomorrow night in a fantastic film festival filled with really meaningful films, all related to OCD. And Ethan, you look like you want to say something.
I just had gas, but I can. So I'm trying to get a face from Liz, but I can't get it. Real quick. Yeah, no, I just wanted to add, it's not just going to be me. Gabe Kaplan is Gabe Kaplan. I don't think that's his name, but Gabe is joining us again from last year for Volume 2. He's a professor at Columbia, specifically studies mental health in film. It's always a really good conversation. We're watching 3 films tomorrow and also have a Q&A with the film creators. So definitely tune in. It's 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern tomorrow on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and all the IOCDF channels. Back to you, Katie.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. So join the Peace of Mind virtual community at iocdf.org/peace of mind. There you can view the live stream schedule and submit topics and questions for future events. We have, again, all sorts of things going on right now for OCD Awareness Week. I know that Heather has been putting lots of things in the chat throughout the night if you all want to get involved. So finally, it looks like we got to all of our questions tonight, but if you have additional questions, feel free to go to iocdf.org/peace of mind to submit your questions, or you're welcome to reach out to any of us individually, or to just go to IOCDF.org if you need some additional resources. You can also contact the IOCDF at info@IOCDF.org, and they would be happy to send any of us your questions that you might have about advocacy, about OCD, or about anything else. So remember to like and subscribe, and we hope you have an amazing OCD Awareness Week, filled with advocacy, filled with community, and filled with many different ways that you seek to live into your values and fight your OCD. So thanks, y'all. Have a good night.
Katie, I want to say real quick, don't forget to go to the calendar. There's a IOCDF calendar, and on there's additional OCD Awareness Week events. And OCD Southern California, we are having an event this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, where we're going to have a free virtual event. So I put the info in the chat, so make sure to go to that. But there's a lot of good things. I know Ethan's speaking at Stanford, I think, on Saturday too. So go to the calendar and look up the other events.
And read my blog.
Yes.
Toenails.
I love Until. I love the title Until. So it's clever. I like it.
Until
Yes.
I secretly, before, as long as we gotta go, but I secretly on OCD Awareness Week, like on one night, I always picture Valerie like sneaking down the chimney to paint people's toenails in the middle of the night. Like everybody
give me
wakes
any
up with
ideas.
toenails. No, that's what I imagine in my head. Is
Wait, you didn't know? She did that to Jeff.
I know.
During the live stream.
Yeah.
Love you guys.
All right, before
Love
we
you.
all get in trouble, goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Very quiet.